Hey everybody, this is PD from the Spinner Rack, and I wanted to do this video to dispel the rumors, the myths that there was a beef between Jack Kirby and John Byrne. There was some disagreements, but ultimately there was not a real beef. Now, what is it? Not ultimately. Why am I saying that? I mean, people have gone as far as to look at this cover here and they say, you know what, there was no chance that Byrne wanted to put Kirby in the shot. And they said this thing is for a blurb right there. But ultimately, Byrne has said that he wanted to put Kirby in there, but he didn't. But I guess someone said no, it could not be Kirby or Marvel. But he's not there. And this picture of Stan isn't drawn by Byrne, it's drawn by Marie Severin. So it probably was left out to say, all right, Marie, can you add them there? But I think the person who did the original, has the original art, says they can't see it. But this would be, well, that's the question. Was this inked on was there pencils on there? It was over, like a light table, something like that. But let's move past that. We don't have to worry about if he drew Kirby on it, because he wanted Kirby to actually draw the book. He wanted him to do like a 12-page story that he'd do with Stan. And that was in, what was it? Comic scene number 2. In comic scene number 2, Byrne says, where did he say that in here? He said, so Byrne said, Marvel's editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter, discussed with him the possibility of doing a 12-page backup story for the issue, which he and Shooter would plot to be drawn and scripted by the FF creators, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. I think it'd be great if it happened, but I wouldn't hold my breath. And then they asked Kirby about it. So Kirby was asked about it, and he asked if he was being approached, and he says he wasn't approached. And he says, no, I don't think I would. I'm quite content with what I'm doing now. I left Marvel with enough characters, enough material in the army of characters. I'm sure they're quite capable of doing a good job with all of that. Now, with that said, that means, did Marvel not contact him? Nope, they did. So in Fantastic Four Chronicles, if you look at that book, there's an interview with Jack Kirby. This is a scan of that. The other one was from Comic Scene. There's another scan of this that I copied. So in this one, we have, what is happening? They asked Kirby about stuff. He doesn't want to talk about the past. He's, to ask him about Fantastic Four 236, the 20th anniversary issue, which a 14-page story modified from the Saturday morning cartoon of the Fantastic Four storyboards by Jack appeared. The story, The Challenge of Doom, was adapted from Fantastic Four number 5, Prisoners of Doom, by Lee and Kirby, of course. And of course, that's told by the robot. So they asked Jack, and Jack said, I had nothing to do with it. Some friend of John Byrne's called and asked if I would do something for the 20th anniversary. I said no. They took the roughs that I did for the cartoon and put 6 inkers, Ashley 10 inkers. I didn't know anything about the goddamn thing until it was published. So they said he didn't receive any money, but at that point, they probably weren't given any royalties for reprints for any book. So with that said, there's only one other myth to go through, because that says that Byrne wanted Kirby to come back to the Fantastic Four for one issue, and Kirby is totally set against it, right? We don't know if that has to do with original artwork or anything that was going on. But there's a myth that Jack Kirby, I can probably pull it out in here. Probably can't find it because it should be a big drawing in here. But I think I did this before and I had the hardest time finding it. So you have in this book, where it says something else. We have Destroy a Duck and the pencils by Jack Kirby, right? So in this book, I should have a picture of it. Where is the Silver Star? There's some cool stuff there. Just too far. You see, I keep going through this, and I keep not being able to find that picture of Destroy a Duck. Do I have? I do. I have it right here. So in this, they introduced a character called, in this book, they introduced, Steve Gerber and Jack Kirby introduced a character called Booster Cogburn, which is obviously with the burn part. So many people have taken that to mean that Kirby here decided to attack Byrne for some reason and destroy it, right? Now this was a special lawsuit benefit issue, and this was brainchild of Steve Gerber. Jack Kirby said yes, he would draw it. And so most of the ideas came from Steve Gerber, right? And at this period, there's a good chance there was no sort of co-plotting or anything like that during this period, because Jack Kirby, when he left Marvel, he had a stipulation of how it would work. And he said, and this is from Comics Buyer's Guide, The King and I. It's by Mark Evener. So I don't know this to be sure, but ultimately this is a condition Kirby had. And it says, there's one special condition that Jack made with his DC deal, which, with but a few exceptions, held for the rest of his career. He would not work Marvel method. He was willing to draw a full script by another writer, or he would writer-artist his own, but he would not work in any approximation of the situation he had with Stan Lee, right? So that means pretty much, outside of some gags that Kirby threw in there, this was mostly by most of the stuff, or the stuff directed at Byrne is probably from Steve Gerber. And I think Byrne and Gerber talked about that afterwards. But ultimately, it was from that, just a short sidebar, that is from, I guess it was, it had to be before the creators' rights that was in the, what's that book? In Comic Scene. At some point, he said he was happy to be a cog at Marvel. And that kind of set some people like, oh, this, that, and the other, when the company's being this bad, right? So from that point of hearing that, he decided to name Byrne Booster Cogburn. So that's a Steve Gerber thing between him playing off of what Byrne said. And Byrne, and then Kirby designed the character, right? So I don't know. What else can I say about that? Oh, I'm still small. I should have done that all large, right? Okay, I'll show you again, Destroy a Duck. Show you my Comics Buyer's Guide. The King and I is Mike Evener eulogizing Kirby. That's part 2. All right, I think I didn't get part 1. So with that said, how did Byrne, we just have to get some words from Byrne himself. So when Jack Kirby passed, we also had that thing where he said he wanted them to work on the Fantastic Four book. So when Kirby passed, he eulogized Jack, saying, there are no words to properly eulogize Jack Kirby. More than any other individual, he touched all parts of the comic industry, artist, and as artist, writer, editor, and even briefly publisher. With Joe Simon, later Stan Lee, and later still on his own, Kirby opened horizons and showed all generations that follow what a good comic books were all about, right? So then the partnership with Simon, with Stan, and later on his own, Kirby opened horizons of the industry. The word Titan, the title King, were none too grandiose to describe the presence and his impact. So, I mean, that's, you know, that's praise, right? So lastly, what else do I have to say? We might as well hear from Jack then. So at some point later, I mean, people have asked Kirby. Well, let's go to one where someone specifically asked Kirby about Byrne, and so he said, although this right is what was it, the comics? What is this? The comics interview. Comics interview. I think it's 121, and says, although I love the Fourth World stories, the Fantastic Four are still my favorite characters. What do you think? What do you think about the way the characters you created were treated nowadays? Are you displeased when their psychology is perverted? What do you think, for instance, by the way John Byrne handled the relationship between the Thing and Alicia? Now, this is heavily loaded, right? So since it's heavily loaded, what is Jack's response? And Jack says, I glance at all the books, but I don't read them, on a continuing basis. I glance at the work, and it's beautiful work. I love the kind of work that John Byrne does. I take it for granted that he's a competent writer because John Byrne is thorough, complete professional. So he probably did an excellent job writing. If the book enjoys success, I can understand that because John Byrne was part of the team that produced the book. So then he doesn't follow up with that. Doesn't follow up that one since Kirby didn't give him what he wanted. And then I think much earlier when John Byrne was on Fantastic Four, Kirby was also interviewed about, I think he was doing, what was it? Was that out there? No, but I guess they just did a general interview with Kirby. No, he had I guess it would be the Silver Star stuff. I'm not sure. I don't have I guess I'd have to add that in there. But I have this little thing, there's Kirby there, so it's definitely from comic interviews, right? So they asked him about Frank Miller, right? What he thinks about the Dark Knight, and he says some glowing things about the Dark Knight. But then as he goes on, he says, I'm a big fan of his. He's one of the few lucky ones that's getting a chance to grow. And then Kirby says, John Byrne is getting a chance to grow. And then the interviewer says, on Superman? And Kirby says, of course, he's a lucky guy. It took Leonardo da Vinci 12 years before he became a master and made the Mona Lisa. 12 years. So the companies aren't giving the young talent enough time to flourish. That's right. So ultimately, there's some positive things about Byrne there too. So ultimately, a lot of other things have been brought up about creators' rights, and I think just taking some of the thing he did in comic scene and kind of transposing that to the future and saying what, like that obviously everyone should be able to own the stuff they created, but what happens when you go into a company knowing that they're going to keep the property, right? But so that's saying that, I knew the deal going in. I shouldn't be surprised when the company says they're not going to give me a cent afterwards. But ultimately, we all want them to renegotiate and make a better deal. But with that said, here's a picture when Jack Kirby came back. It's drawn by John Byrne of immortalizing Kirby in his own style. And this is form number 11. There's another printout of one of the covers. I don't have that in my possession. So I found this off of the internet. It's a fun picture, and John Byrne signs it Jack Byrne. So I think that kind of dispels the myth that Byrne. Well, there's no beef on Byrne's side, and possibly there was some issue on Kirby's side, but at some point they worked it out, right? At some point, Kirby had some glowing things to say about Byrne, and that's in print. So whatever it was, I mean, I have the original of this thing here where he says the comments that John Byrne is thorough, right? So that's my proof. That's what I got. Spin rack out.